Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you on behalf of Project Bauhaus to the preliminary course from Bauhaus to Silicon Valley at the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. So thank you very much for joining us that early on a Saturday morning for a day of exploration. I'm Anh-Linh, member of the Project Bauhaus team, together with my colleagues Jesko Filzer, Christian Hiller, Philipp Oswald, Joan Pouzin, and Jan Wenzel. I'm also the chairman of the Arch+ Verein, which is the organizer of the Project Bauhaus, as well as the editor of the publisher of the journal Arch+, together with Nikolaus Kühnert. And by the way, we just released the news issue on the occasion of today's event. The issue focuses on the architectures of globalization and sums up the discussions we have conducted with Project Bauhaus on the controversy on universalism. It's part of a trilogy we have planned for Project Bauhaus, so please make sure to get a copy outside. It's worth it. I would also like to welcome the team of our partner, the Volksbühne Berlin. And today's symposium is a collaboration with the Haus der Kulturen der Welt, so thank you, Bernd Scherer, for hosting us again. I would also like to welcome the directors of 3 institutions which supports and funds Project Bauhaus. Welcome Ms. Hortensia Völkers, member of the executive board and artistic director of the German Federal Cultural Foundation, Ms. Heike Katharina Mertens, Managing Director of the Ernst Schering Foundation, and last but not least, I hope he is here already, Mr. Thomas Krüger, Director of the Federal Agency for Civic Education, who was the first one to believe in our ambitious endeavor. So thank you all very much for your tremendous support. A warm welcome also to all our distinguished guests and participants who will be introduced later by the moderators. So thank you very much for taking part in our project. So what's Project Bauhaus about and how we will spend the day together? I will give a short introduction about the structure of the project and the day. So as you all know, 2019 will mark the centenary of the founding of the Bauhaus. Across the world, there has been a shared desire to update its legacy. But in our opinion, every attempt to revive it is doomed to failure. So from 2017 until 2019, Project Bauhaus is undertaking a critical inventory of the ideas of the Bauhaus in 3 separate stages. The program explores the triad of knowledge, technology, and progress as the central themes of the Bauhaus and the classical avant-garde. Project Bauhaus takes a contemporary perspective towards these issues, reflecting on them theoretically as well as practically through design experiments. Project Bauhaus critically examines the ideas of the Bauhaus by using its methods. So in a preliminary course that is today, and a workshop which will take place in 2018, it will seek to expose the internal contradictions of the Western idea of progress and discuss alternative approaches. How can we decolonize our understanding of technology? And how can we develop other ideas of progress and renewal? While we still sympathize with the ambition of the Bauhaus that design can change society, we are skeptical about the methods developed by the Bauhaus. Also, in a time which is steeped in design, a time where everything is subject to design, we have to ask, if everything is designed, would it be liberating to have an absence of design? So the political impact of design is that which we are interested in. as well as the questions of the direction of change and the kind of society we are envisioning. The symposium today is a starting point for the workshop which will take place next year. Participants are Armin Avanesian and Victoria Ivanova, Arno Brandehuber and Christopher Roth, Beatrice Colomina and Mark Wickley, and Jesko Fetze and Brave New Alps, as well as Georg Wachliotis and Mike Marais. These are the pairs who will be joining and building up kind of brigades working on different themes. The project will culminate in a provocation of sort, that is the funeral which we want to celebrate in 2019. We think it's now time to say farewell to the Bauhaus. In its centenary year, a production at the Volksbühne Berlin will lay the Bauhaus to rest in an anniversary party. The performances will pay tribute to the Bauhaus while at the same time freeing ourselves from its legacy. An internationally valued architecture theoretician and historian will write the play, and an acclaimed architect will be the stage designer. More on that at the beginning of next year. After me, my colleague Philipp Oswald will give a short introduction to the themes of today. Philipp Oswald is an architect and professor of the theory of architecture at the University of Kassel. He is co-founder of Project Bauhaus and was the former director of the Bauhaus Foundation, Dessau. After the short introduction, Hortensia Völkers, Heike Katharina Mertens, and Thomas Krüger will say a few words of welcome. And then from 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m., Fred Turner will kick off the symposium with a keynote on the theme from Bauhaus to Silicon Valley. The lecture and the Q&A will be introduced and moderated by Claudia Marais. Claudia Marais is a designer and cultural scientist with a specialization in design studies and design research. Since 2013, she has been director of the Institute of Experimental Design and Media Cultures at the Academy of Art and Design, Basel. She is also a principal investigator of the Cluster of Excellence Image, Knowledge, Gestaltung at the Humboldt University of Berlin, and she co-created the preliminary course today. So thank you very much, Claudia, I don't see you, for the wonderful collaboration. Thank you. We will have a short lunch break from 1:30 to 2:30. You can get something to eat in the cafeteria. Please make sure to return in time for the first panel on technologies of knowledge, which starts at 2:30 and lasts until 5 p.m. So don't miss the first input by the artist Moreshin Alayari, and I'm sure if you know her, you will be in time. So the panel are designed to be a kind of workshop situation, and the speakers and respondents are sitting at a table and discussing with each other. The table and the speakers will be filmed and streamed so that you won't miss anything going on at the table. At 5 p.m., we will have a 30 minutes coffee break and then start again at 5:30 with the panel on spaces of knowledge with an input by René de Graaf of OMA. And the moderator of this panel is Armin Avanesian, philosopher, political theorist, and enfant terrible. He has taught at the Freie Universität Berlin and was visiting professor at various art academies in Europe and the US. He is also editor-at-large at Merve Verlag, and since this fall, in charge of the theory program at the Volksbühne. And he's also taking part in Project Bauhaus with his Bureau of Cultural Strategies, together with Victoria Ivanova, who will be co-curating the Project Bauhaus workshop next year. So thank you, Armin, for your contribution. And make sure to stay until the end, because from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m., we will have the final panel designed by Brave New Alps. Brave New Alps produce design projects that engage people in discussing and reconfiguring the politics of social and environmental issues. They produce spaces for collective learning and making. So by transforming this space into a spatial experiment for informal knowledge exchange, Brave New Alps invites the speakers and audience to reflect on the main themes of the day in a convivial setup. So what's the best way to start a non-hierarchical discussion? That's when you gather at the table, literally. Brave New Alps have designed an artist intervention that involves food and drinks to invite the audience on stage. So the best part for the audience will take place at the end, so make sure to stay and engage with the speakers and others. And that's also the reason why the other panels won't have extensive Q&A sections in order to keep this tight schedule. So I would like to end by once again expressing my gratitude to Hortensia Völkers and the German Federal Cultural Foundation, Heike Katharina Mertens and the Ernst Schering Stiftung, as well as Thomas Krüger and the Federal Agency for Civic Education for their support. Thank you also, Bernd Scherer, the director of the HKW, for your support. And of course, a big thank you also to everyone working hard on the project the last few months, the team of HKW, especially Veronika Gugel. Of course, I have to thank the Project Bauhaus team with Christian Hiller, Joanne Posin, Nicole Minden, and Christine Rüb for the development and planning of the format. Jesko Fetze and Philipp Oswald, as well as Claudia Marais and Armin Avanesian, and Victoria Ivanova, thank you for many fruitful discussions, and the Verein with Nora Dünser for their support. The design you see is done by Marie and Marie, so thank you for that, and also our partner Architekturclips for the video setup for today. And without the help of the entire ACT+ team, which has considerably contributed to the organization, that would not be possible. So thank you all for helping to set up the project. So with that, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Philipp Oswald, to stay to stay informed on the program of Project Bauhaus. Please visit our new website, projectbauhaus.de. You will see a lot of documentation on discussions and what we are doing and have done, so have a look. So thank you, and I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm obviously not Philipp Oswald. And he asked me to go first. So let me welcome you very warmly on behalf of the Kulturstiftung des Bundes. And yes, I must say I feel a little bit persecuted by anniversaries. I mean, this is something that was not that much usual when I was younger. So the last 10 years, I mean, we fall from Luther to Goethe to Schiller to Kleist, and I mean, it's crazy, and probably very useful for the touristic business and for getting money for nice projects. So this is the reason why we follow with this. And we just had in 1990 a very big Bauhaus project with Philipp Oswald and the other two directors of the main institutions, and a big exhibition in Gropius House. So I thought, well, this is this, you know, but now there we go again. And so the foundation I direct, we have a real enormous bunch of projects. And well, let me tell you, I mean, I think they're quite museological, they're very historical, they're well, probably they are answering the necessities. If you have a museum, is what you have to do. So I am extremely grateful that this project came up, and I think it's the sharpest and the brightest and smartest of the discourse and more intellectual projects we are funding. I'm very thankful for this. And what interests me and what I think is extremely demanding is the fact that you want to decolonize the conception of progress. So somehow everybody who is not completely dull is working on, in some way on this. So in the ecological sense, climate change, education, future of labor, growth, and all these subjects are part of this, or consequence of this belief and this conception of progress. The West has very accurately spread all over the world. It's a structural, ideological problem. I don't know how we will get out of this business, but we have no alternative as working on this. So thank you very much. I think it covers the whole thing. The business with the funeral is, of course, fantastic. I'm the only one who finds this funny. In my group, in my Bauhaus group, I'm not afraid of it. I think it's a very smart idea, and good luck, and have a good day.
Sorry, I'm not Hortensia Völkers. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the idea that aesthetics or formal material design has a social political impact is not yet that widespread in civic education. This is a case even though some of the questions that Bauhaus movement threw up a century ago, and the questions you are asking today in connection with revitalizing the Bauhaus are equally on the agenda of the Federal Agency for Civic Education. We too spend a lot of time considering the production and dissemination of knowledge, but we also spend a lot of time thinking about our attitudes towards universalism, which parallels the unusual questions for 2016 of the project Bauhaus. Some time ago already, Western society began to undergo a transformation of which many producers and disseminators of knowledge are only slowly gaining awareness. The ideas and ambition of the old Bauhaus left deep and lasting traces. In fact, there are still positive reference points for education today. Enlightenment. The consideration of general human needs, the connection between different forms of knowledge. Another aspect that remains significant is the values and theories behind progressive education, which sought to highlight the importance of emotion and design over and above technological and scientific insights. The aim of achieving emancipation through education and knowledge is still valid to this day. And yet, over the last decade, we have witnessed some profoundly and undesirable developments that go hand in hand with social change and which requires us today to rethink our attitudes to culture of knowledge. Late modernity offers no parallels to the sense of renewal and forwards-looking attitudes that dominated during the classical modern period. Instead, we struggle to diagnose modern phenomena such as post-democracy, defective democracy, crisis of representation, and anti-politics. Given that public confidence in institutions, science, the media, and the politics is warning, and the gulf between social groups is widening, how can we continue to generate and disseminate knowledge that use democracies as its normative point of reference. My theory is that we need to abandon our desire to understand the world in all its complexity. In other words, I believe we need to depart from the fiction of wanting to fully capture and understanding reality. Reality has always been a construct, a product of one's perspective and place and time in history. More knowledge does not necessarily help to gain a clearer picture. Take universalism, for example, in Western classic modernism, pledging allegiance to universalism and internationalism, to human rights and the comprehensive validity of scientific knowledge was a plausible act. Today, all through Western societies continue to maintain the universalist loyalties. They have produced a situation in which violating the human rights and the population in the global south is a prerequisite of their own existence. In addition, the principle that all humans and their needs are equal, which modernity accepted, at least in theory, is now being jeopardized by identitarian movements. And even emancipation-oriented identity politics is centered more around the difference between interests and needs than around their similarities. How do we deal with all this? Today, education and knowledge are categories that are defined by the conviction that some contradictions cannot be resolved and that ambiguity is inherent in cultures of knowledge. The way we approach knowledge has to be critically by default. The fact that human rights continue to be violated does not mean we should abandon the concept altogether. The fact that internationalism has been perverted does not imply that we should stop working towards political inter- and transnationalization. The fact that education has been devalued and instrumentalized for the elites does not mean that it's useless as a path towards emancipation. However, the fact that knowledge is used to literally reformat human beings and facilitate neo-colonial exploitation does challenge us to respond politically. Knowledge has a subjective dimension and calls upon us to occupy a clear position. Thank you for your attention, and I hope it will be a great conference and you are very inspiring in this. Thanks.
Also a warm welcome on behalf of the Sharing Foundation. And thank you for the organizers to give me some minutes to introduce you a bit to the relationship between Sharing Foundation and the Bauhaus. The idea of the Bauhaus to interconnect the various forms of knowledge, artistic, technical, scientific, and emotional, is in a way also the vision of the Sharing Stiftung. Most of our operational and funded projects deal with the attempt to strengthen the dialogue between artists and scientists in order to create a more profound knowledge, but also act in a collaborative way. But our emphasis lies on the interface between art and life sciences, not on design or architecture. Therefore, Project Bauhaus Fokus Wissen is the only one we support within the Bauhaus centenary, and I think it's a special one because of the questions you address to the audience here. We regard one question as crucial in our times. Which sides of knowledge does society need today? This question implies another question which occupies us. What does knowledge, or what kind of knowledge do we need today in times when the World Wide Web provides almost all facts, all data, and all information on almost everything? Please let me cite one of the most important Bauhaus lecturers and probably the first multimedia artist in the world, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. Although the research work of the artist is rarely as systematic as that of the scientist, they both may deal with the whole of life in terms of relationships, not of details. In fact, the artist does not so more consistently than the scientist, because with each of his works, he faces the problem of the interrelated whole. Why only a few theoretical scientists are allowed this luxury of a total vision. End of the quotation. Since technical innovation does not enter our lives slowly, but rapidly like a lightning bolt, we need more artists, more architects, and more designers to take a look on the whole. We need more total visions in the sense of a bird's eye view, which is able to reflect the high-speed technical development. The Bauhaus vision is 100 years old, and I really also love the idea of the funeral to really bury this idea and get along in order to overcome the lack of new visions. In February this year, we had the pleasure to present an exhibition by Morishine Alayari, who is here today, and other invited artists in our project space Unter den Linden. The exhibition was called On the Far Side of the Marchlands. The exhibition explored the potential of radically new topographies through border regions, so-called marchlands. The starting point was a 3D additivist cookbook conceived and edited by Morishine Alayari and Daniel Rourke. It brings together radical projects by over 100 artists, activists, and theorists, reflecting on the revolutionary potential of the 3D printing. Morishine's aims is to turn 3D printing into a tool for emancipation and activism. That is one of the new visions we need. And in fact, it also was a great inspiration for me and for our work as well, in order to think how we can reflect knowledge today, and the technology in special. So I wish all of you and all of us inspiring insights in this conference, and thank you for your attention.
Good morning. I would like to say a few words to introduce the day, the idea of the day, of the preliminary course, which is kind of the first step in our 2 years program, as Anh-Linh has described, where we kind of want first today to engage with you in the question of knowledge as a basis of the next year's work, where we want to do experimental workshops in kind of coming to practice, and then to end in 2019 with a funeral. But we thought we should raise the question of knowledge at the beginning of the project. And if we kind of go back to the kind of the starting of the Bauhaus 1919, the start, I would say, was based on a reflection on a crisis of modernism. On a crisis of modernism in the early 20th century, where modernization was kind of an undirected centrifugal force which fragmented the everyday life. And of course, the First World War I kind of a most brutal expression of that. And kind of countering this challenge, Gropius stated in the Bauhaus Manifest the idea of course, which goes back to the Romanticism of the Gesamtkunstwerk, the Einheitskunstwerk, as he called it there, as a desire to create a new synthesis by design, yeah, to kind of heal the world in a sense by design kind of to the fragments kind of developed in modernization to kind of bring it back together in a new synthesis. And the idea of the synthesis was based on a new kind of knowledge culture. The idea kind of to reintegrate the different knowledge cultures into one which have been kind of also fragmented in the process of modernization and enlightenment. And so this kind of, this attempt to create a new knowledge culture has, I would say, kind of two directions. On the one hand, it was an attempt to systemize design and artistic practice in a way kind of to parallel it to the kind of the systematization of knowledge in science and technology. So it was an attempt to, in a sense, to participate in the unbelievable success of systemized knowledge in science and technology, and basically to bring up the arts and the design to this kind of progress. But in the same time, these knowledge cultures of the Bauhaus and of the, maybe also of the general avant-garde, was also a critique of the knowledge cultures of the day, critiquing kind of the over-dominance of science and technology, and asking that other types of knowledge need more emphasis and more importance in society. So to basically balance the over-domination of society by science and technology. And I think that this kind of point of critique is underestimated because also of the rhetoric of the Bauhaus people and the avant-garde in general, kind of speaking about progress and speaking of kind of themselves as an avant-garde, kind of sympathizing also with the modern world and modern technology. But I think that this critique of the current condition of the time is fundamental to what the Bauhaus did. And it's quite interesting, Moholy was already mentioned, and he will be mentioned again, that Moholy in his book, The Vision in Motion, which was published a year after his death, 1947, he was very explicit about this. He was also a little bit critical about kind of a misbalance maybe at the Bauhaus time itself. But he was very explicit to say that kind of science was overrated since the 19th century, and that kind of a new importance has to be put onto design and art, and basically to balance the different knowledge cultures and to come to a new synthesis of knowledge. And of course, the idea of knowledge cultures at the Bauhaus was connected with the idea of pedagogy as an educational institution, and the idea basically by these knowledge cultures to emancipate the people, to empower the people, to free up new possibilities for the people, and in the end to create a new man in a modern industrialized society. In our days, and that is the point of our conference, we, as kind of extreme version, we have the different corporations in the Silicon Valley like Apple, Google, Facebook, which in a sense kind of stage themselves as the new Bauhaus. They make basically more or less the same claim, kind of using modern technology to enable new possibilities in everyday life, to invent new lifestyles, which empower the people and create new forms of social interaction, and which also, like the Bauhaus, embrace modern science and technology to create a new society. And one can also say that this kind of desire for a new synthesis, if we speak of a smartphone on the one hand, which is of course very much a synthesis of many things, or if you take also like a search engine like Google, it's also the kind of idea of synthesis is critical to this. So there are quite even more parallelism. But if we look at this, is this really what we want to end up with? Is this really emancipatory? And what are the knowledge cultures which are marginalized through this, which are suppressed? And so these are questions we want to face today. So this title, From Bauhaus to Silicon Valley, is like a polemic exaggeration which is provoking objection and a critique of the present. And so in this sense, the idea of the conference is, on the one hand, to rediscover the critical dimension of the Bauhaus, and also to kind of engage in a critique of the Bauhaus ideas, which show in their fulfillment a very deep ambivalency in themselves. Thank you.